All right, everyone, we're live. Fantastic. Good to see everybody here joining us today. Here's Sean Landsberg from AppWork, one of our, I'll say, peers in the maintenance side of things, especially in property maintenance, doing incredible work from the, I think the tech side. Like I love just all the work. Whenever I hear you talk, it's about the tech. It's about the tech. It's about the tech. And I just share the same passion for that person. They are first responders. They do need that kind of like profile, and they're, better for worse, someone needs to raise their profile because they don't get the same profile that the other parts of the industry do. And whenever I hear you guys talk about what your product is doing, I share the same thrill for these folks. So that's kind of a bit of the intro for everybody. As always, Getting Hell Yes is about the conversation that the buyer and what they're trying to solve. Like we're really trying to talk about how we understand the problems that they have before them, why there's something they're trying to solve for today, what their current options are, why they're maybe not what they need, they're lacking in terms of what they're trying to solve for, and then how we end up finding them, how we end up having conversations with them, what it looks like and feels like, and ultimately sharing those stories so that people can listen to us both on the suppliers and the buyer side and understand how we're thinking about this relationship that we're all looking to establish with our partners. As always, this is brought to you by IrisCX. We have a lot of shared common sponsors, which is outstanding. I love the fact that you do working with Tony, working with Adrian, and senior teams of the Multifamily Leadership Council. So really a lot of good opportunities to share ideas with Sean and his team. We're trying to get together a podcast so we can actually just talk about maintenance software, but we got to work with ours calendars and schedules, and that's complicated. But, really thrilled to have you today, Sean. And every conversation I have with you is like a full-on cup fill and a pump up. So I'm hoping everyone can catch the same energy today. If you are online and live, catch us on the add comments and questions. We'll address those as we go through. And then if you are catching this on the live afterwards, any comments you put in on LinkedIn will both get notified. And then ultimately, if you listen to the podcast, any comments you put in there, I'll shoot them back to Sean, make sure he gets them. So as we always kick things off, a little bit of time around your background, how you got into this role, why in God's name would you start a property management maintenance company? And and ultimately, what's the problem you're solving today? Why was that problem so compelling? And let her rip, man, Sean. I can't wait to share your story.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I guess first of all, thank you for having me here. This is really fun. And like you said, I think we've had some great conversations offline, and happy to now bring some of these conversations online and talk more about kind of who we are, what we're doing. Like you said, I started out on the property management side of things, and had this really wacky idea where, hey, we should take an idea which we were building internally and, hey, let's bring that to market, which was in hindsight not a very smart decision for somebody that knew nothing about the technology side of things. I realized the hard way that the property management business and the startup world are two different worlds that don't really collide. You can't just just go from one to the other easily.
You got to break the egg.
Yeah. There's a lot to unlearn and then relearn. But I definitely do think, though, I definitely had a massive advantage coming from that side of the industry, where now that we're, so to speak, on the other side of it, and we've successfully, so to speak, crossed to the other side. I definitely think we're coming with a big advantage. The fact that not just me, but other people on our team have come from that side of the space as well, and really understand the problem that we're solving. Really understand the end users. And quite frankly, I think it's something that's not very common in our industry. And as an operator myself, as a former operator myself, I found that a lot of the times I'll be speaking to potential, people that was selling technology to me and my team. It was very obvious that they didn't fully understand how their own technology would be utilized on the field in practice. And I think that's one of the things that we were able to do very uniquely.
And so why does the problem still exist? Right? So what's the problem you're seeking to solve? So when you're talking to prospects and you're opening a conversation up, and it's often around, okay, so you started with the notion that you saw a gap in the market for your own personal needs and what you wanted to achieve. But sometimes our own needs are different than the broader market. And often as founders, we find that out the hard way. How did you go about determining what was a broader problem that needed to be solved for our buying group?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I will say, that to address one of the things that you just mentioned, and then I'll talk more about the problems. But I think you're right. You're 1,000% right. I mean, any founder, especially a product-led founder, somebody who's solving a problem that they've experienced, very often they'll create a solution to a problem that they've experienced, and then they'll take that solution to market and try to sell other people on that solution. And then they realize the hard way that other people don't necessarily see eye to eye or feel the same, feel that either have the same problem or feel the same solution, or feel
Mhm.
or like the solution that was shared. And we've done the same thing. I'll say when we first came to market, I think one advantage that we had is that I think the problem within multifamily maintenance is a relatively straightforward problem. It's not a
Mhm.
niche problem that we experience, a unique problem as an operator. I think it's a very broad problem, and I think we've solved that in an incredible way.
Mhm.
So we definitely came out really strong. But the other thing that we also did, and we put a lot of focus on it, was we actually structured ourselves in a way that we could bounce back and we could realize and learn and say, hey, yes, what we did here is a great foundation, but every client has different use cases and different ways that they want to apply the solution to their problems.
Mhm.
And we have to be able to adopt and build our technology around our clients. I think the industry does a really good job today at saying, here's the technology. Now go use it. Whereas
Right.
we're saying, hey, tell us the problem, and we'll help make sure that the technology solves your problems. And thankfully, we've gotten to a place today where 99.9% of the times we do that off the bat. So when
Mhm.
we bring on a client, we're already solving their problems. And we're not, so to speak, rushing to make adjustments as last minute as we were.
You've got,
I
yeah,
think,
you've got your repeatability around it, right? You've a
yeah, and
repeatable, but that comes from understanding like the market better, right? Through iterations. And then you begin to ask the right questions that point to the thing that you solve, right?
yeah, and I also think we've also, as a product has matured, and as so we built a product around our problems. So now we, so to
Mhm.
speak, add another equation there. So we had another client now, and their problem or the way they view the solution is slightly different than ours. So now we fixed it for them too, right?
Yep.
But we not only did we fix it for them, right? We also fixed it for 5 other people. So either they see the problem the way we did, or they now see it the way they did. And as we multiply that, and we did that to 10 clients, 20 clients, 50 clients, and 100 clients, right? So we're actually, because we've been able to iterate so quickly, and we came to market not saying, hey, our product is the best, most amazing product, take it and we're not going to touch it. It's like, no, we think we have built a really solid foundation. If there's something that you think needs to be done better, tell us, and we'll improve on it.
Yeah.
I mean, that has been our model to date, and that will continue to be our business model. Yeah, I think that's been a major. It has been a big learning point, though, for me when coming to market. I didn't think we were going to have to be that responsive,
Mhm.
that reactive. I was hoping we could be more proactive when it came to innovation. But I think honestly, what the industry needs, what the industry wanted, is exactly that.
Are you finding like when you talk to the market, what is their principal like motivation for change? Is it speed, quality, or cost? You can't choose all
Uh,
three.
Yeah, I think quality is the most important thing, is what I would say. I
Yeah.
think at the end of the day, I think people are, when people come to a product like ours. I mean, first of all, what's I think the most interesting thing that I realize is we're still selling to massive companies that they are. Um, we're in a major way, we are a replacement to pen and paper today. A
Mhm.
majority of the industry today is still using pen and paper to manage their maintenance operations. So I think that's where the, call it quality, call it efficiency. I mean, it's such a no brainer for us to come in, to use a solution like ours, and use that to just supercharge your maintenance. It's just, I think that's the biggest thing right there.
Do you find that like what we're finding is that often it's so chaotic in these current organizations because of what you just described that even getting to the root cause of what needs to be solved is really difficult.
I couldn't agree with you more. To your point, by the way, and it's something that I think you and we've had offline conversations about. I think our biggest challenge is not selling people on our product. We do that. I think we have an incredible team who've designed and built an insane product. People see our product and they're mind blown. It's like, holy cow, we need this tomorrow. The bigger problem that we have, though, is convincing people to even come look at our product. People
Mhm.
don't think they have a problem today.
Mhm.
People, like you said, they have a problem with resident retention. They're not looking at maintenance. They're looking at marketing. They're looking at customer service. They're looking at, I don't know, other areas of the business. And they don't say, oh, well, we have a problem with maintenance.
Mhm. They're
People
more
have a,
apt to fill. They're more apt to accelerate the water in the leaky bucket than address the leaky bucket.
well, I
Like it's
also
got a
think
leaky
people,
bucket problem.
yeah, I also think a lot of it is people naturally go to areas that they know. So if you think about it, most decision makers in our industry are former property managers, regional managers, so on and so forth on the operations
Mhm.
side. So if the occupancy isn't there, right? A property is, I don't know, 88% occupied. They need to come up with a game plan. Hey, how are we increasing the occupancy? What I would say, and maybe I'm biased because right, maintenance is important and we see that
Yeah.
and we built a solution around it. But I would say, start from the bottom up. Do I have units ready?
Mhm.
Right. And that's where I would start. But most people in the industry today, if you say, hey, you have an occupancy problem, how are you solving that? They're like, oh, well, we just signed up. We increased our sponsorship on Zillow. We have a new tier on apartments.com, and we're spending more money on marketing, a more creative marketing strategy. And all that's doing is essentially just getting you more leads that and potentially more applications that I can't move in because I don't have units ready.
Yep.
But I think a lot of this is about people not fully understanding the problem, and again, people naturally trying to solve a problem that's closest to them, that they know best.
What I think was really interesting now, I mean, I think I got a newsletter that came out yesterday. I can't remember which one it was, but it's like talking about we're at peak concessions, right? So not only do you, do you have to incur the expense, like the hard cost of actually turning out that unit, but you are going at a negative net rent. So you're collecting less revenue when you let someone churn. So like not only are we incurring let's call it the $1,500 for, let's call it $2,500, maybe $3,000 for every unit that turns over, in terms of like marketing expenses, leasing, all the other crap.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have like maybe 7.5%, 10% of yield on that unit, right? So now you're thinking like it might take 9-10 months before you get payback on that unit that you just turned over because you didn't do maintenance right. Like literally, it's a case of like if you didn't, you chose not to solve the $150 problem, and it's costing you like $8,000
100%.
in overall resident experience.
It's also costing you indirectly because now my maintenance team is going to be that much more burnt out because now they have to turn more units and be that much more frustrated. That may lead to negative reviews, which is going to make it harder on the marketing side for me to refill that unit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's so much, right? Obviously, there's so many indirect. You just spoke about direct costs. I mean, there's so many indirect costs and things about that as well. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, the biggest problem that we have as a company is that people don't recognize the importance of maintenance. I think the problem that we're solving, though, is exactly that: is maintenance, and we're shining a light on it. We're making it maintenance like you said, has a direct impact to just about every single KPI in the property management industry. I mentioned occupancy. You mentioned even more specifically in terms of churn. I mean, you can take delinquency, right? I mean, maintenance is so directly impacted on delinquency. I mean, think about it. If it's 103 degrees in your apartment because dead of the summer and your AC is not working, are you paying rent? I know many residents
Oh,
that
it's a lever.
didn't. Yeah, that's the only leverage that they have against you, and that's what they're going to most certainly utilize that. So if maintenance doesn't go well, your delinquency starts to skyrocket, and your rent collections go down, right? I mean, there's all these, and these are not like far-fetched ideas. These are direct impacts of maintenance. So I think at the end of the day, we're solving some really fundamental problems that the industry has. And like you said, I think we focus a lot at the end of the day on how we solve those problems is through the technician side, right? At the end of the day, we realize that maintenance is a very human-led industry. It's not, we don't have it in the immediate future now where when there's a pipe that's leaking, you'll be able to press a button and somehow that pipe will fix itself. So we understand that our role as a technology provider is to how do we empower the humans that are out there that we're relying on to provide that experience for the residents, right? To turn those units faster, to prevent the residents from moving out, taking care of their work orders, not just fast, but with good quality, preventing callbacks and all that kind of fun stuff. So that's what our focus is really trying to empower the technicians, giving both through actual tools to make it easier and make them more effective, make them more efficient, but also through just making their job fun. There's a lot that we can do to increase their engagement. I mean, maintenance, we know that, first of all, they make up 50% of just about every property management company, sometimes even more than 50%. They also have the highest turnover rate in the industry, the professionals themselves. Maintenance is not a fun job. It's always, they're often the first to be blamed for things. Very rarely will somebody call them and say, oh, by the way, I want to thank you because my pipe is not leaking. Right.
Yeah, right.
Right. They're going to get a call when the pipe is leaking. And when you walk into someone's apartment as a maintenance professional, they're going to be screaming and yelling at you because you're the person that they see. And they're not happy. Right. So I think naturally the maintenance teams in the industry are at a severe disadvantage. And if we can use our technology to help offset that, then we believe that that's a winning recipe for success. I think we can essentially help solve that churn problem with technicians, and get technicians to stay at companies for longer. We can increase the quality of their work, which obviously, again, goes directly back into, again, the fundamental problems that I think the industry has today, with maintenance being the number one most impactful
Function.
item when it comes, function exactly within the success, within the success of an asset.
Well, I mean, it is the business, right? I mean, like Don Bedford said that at what was it called? Maintenance and Max. It's talking about Maintenance Summit. It's talking about like maintenance is the business. Tell me what it is in the business, right? I mean, like 2 points there, but that kind of to collaborate or to corroborate. Like in the leasing world, you get to go say, how can I help you? You get to go say, how can I fill your needs? You get to go say, congratulations. In a maintenance context, the first thing you say is, I'm sorry. Every day.
I think you hit that spot on. I mean, think about it. I mean, I say this all the time to our teams when I was on the operations side. At the end of the day, a leasing agent, and obviously within context, for better or worse, I'm generalizing it, so don't take it, verbatim. But essentially,
to be friendly,
the property managers and the leasing teams, they get to meet people on their best day. Right? People are in the most happiest moods. They're excited. They're moving into a new home. Typically, things are going well. It's exciting. It's an exciting time for anybody, typically. Whereas maintenance, typically, your interaction with people, which is the residents, is typically in a moment where something's wrong, where something's bad. You're walking the property because you're always out on property, whereas the leasing team is typically in the office. Residents are going to catch you, and they're going to yell at you from their cars and say, "Hey, my AC's not working. Go fix it." And they're going to. Your interactions are typically going to be negative interactions, where your interactions with leasing teams interactions are typically going to be more positive interactions. But something that, by the way, maintenance also has a direct impact is not just on the maintenance teams, the turnover of the maintenance team. It also has a direct impact on the turnover of the leasing team, because, by the way, when maintenance is really out of control, the residents are calling the office all day. No leasing agent wants to sit there telling residents, oh, okay, we're going to send somebody, we're going to send somebody, we're going to send somebody.
Yeah.
No leasing agent wants to get yelled at all day. So we actually found that as an operators, our properties where maintenance were struggling, which is also really interesting.
Do you find I mean, it's difficult to lease a unit if you got a line of people at your door, right? Complaining.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a hard time doing that. Do you find that how is it different for fee managers versus owner operators?
I mean, I don't think there's a real difference. I think the only real difference is kind of the approach that people take to essentially handling in sense of people when you're an owner.
We're in a little bit of technical difficulty here. Ooh, you still there? So what we're talking about here was wait for Sean to pop back here. Oh, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh yeah, there we go. Sorry, we lost you on the gap between owners and fee managers.
Yeah, no, I think it depends at the end of the day on the investment theory and thesis for the owners. But I think typically owners do take more would think typically longer term. They're thinking more in terms of asset value, whereas managers are thinking. Fee managers are kind of how do I kick the can down the road? How do I put it? I think that's it's not a negative approach. And sometimes Band-Aids are much better solutions because they're faster solutions. And sometimes that's what's needed. It's not a good versus bad solution, but I guess from the people that I've been exposed to, both as an operator, we were actually owner operator and the third party manager, so we did both. And then obviously through my time here at AppWork, just interacting with different clients, that's kind of what we hear, and see.
When you look at like, here's something we hear all the time, right? Is that there's we've got there's bigger PMSs that run the financials, and they have maintenance modules, and they are what they are, but still people still persist to buy other maintenance software. So how do you address that conversation when it comes up? Well, we already have, we've already got made maintenance or whatever, right? Like, how do you guys dig in on that and learn a little bit more about where the opportunities are for AppWork to be different?
Yeah, I think excellent question, and I think the general response for us is really straightforward. Typically, what we see is when people say, "Oh, we're using a PMS, right? We're using the native maintenance solution that's built out through the PMS." I mean, our first response is, "Okay, are you closing work orders? Is your maintenance team using any kind of technology? Are they using that technology, or are you closing work orders with pen and paper?" 99.9% of the time, the answer is pen and paper. But I mean, for us, we're not just the solution of pen and paper. I mean, essentially, all of the PMSs give you is essentially the only functionality is, all right, let's go off of pen and paper to a digital solution. But I mean, we're so much deeper than that. In the value that we bring, the level of efficiency. I mean, think of it for a PMS. They had to go. I mean, almost all of them, their accounting softwares at the core, and then kind of built out different. None of them are experts in any one industry. And outside of accounting, for example, Yardi is known to be the best accounting software on the market today, right? So, but Yardi is not an expert, not focused on maintenance, quite frankly, right? They're not a maintenance.
No, it's not why people choose Yardi, right? And this is the thing that I often kind of like end up tripping on is like, why did you choose Yardi? Well, because of our bankers told us that we had to use it. Often is what I've heard now and then. It's the best accounting software. It helps us all the, trusting, all that sort of stuff. But then you dig, and then the maintenance piece is really it's almost like a receiver of the pen and paper process versus an actual manager of the maintenance process.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And I think for us, it's just, it's so easy for us, so to speak, to go up against, because again, the pitch here is, they do maintenance for them is one of many things. For maintenance for us is all we do, and we're deep into it in a way that nobody else can be deep into it. We're so focused, so invested on maintenance, and we understand maintenance so much better than anybody else could. And I think that's really what's different between us and a traditional PMS.
I find funny to ask the question. So you think of the two systems of engagement, or two opportunities for engagement in this business, is the CRM piece and then the maintenance piece, right? And then you got the PMS in the back end of it. I know I'm generalizing. Yeah. Let's be general for a second. And so like the CRM piece, they're very happy to buy a separate CRM because the PMS is our accounting software, right? But then you ask them to buy maintenance software, consider maintenance software. What are your gaps in maintenance software? And they'll kind of they'll just hiccup a little bit because they haven't really thought about it that way. But really, it's like you've got, I call them systems of engagement. I had a conversation with Shiv about that. Offense and defense, like offense being leasing, defense being maintenance, and you've got the score clock is your PMS system, or your scoreboard's PMS system. But they are very willing to buy CRMs, and there's a lot of momentum and energy around that. But to buy maintenance software, and my data point on that is you go back to OpTech last year and walk the floor, and there's probably 3 maintenance softwares on the floor, and there might have been, managed Wi-Fi was half of OpTech, and then after it was CRM systems. And it's just interesting to think of and if you use that as a data point of what's available or who's spending to try and capture people, it's really interesting to think about, the footprint of maintenance software out there and who's buying maintenance software. It's just, for me, my background, I came from maintenance as the core business, right? Field operations, 25 years in it. And so that was the business. If maintenance didn't work, people died, right? Maintenance didn't work, revenue was lost. And while people aren't suffering, or people are getting injured, and units are collapsing, are falling apart, and revenue is at risk. And so I just sometimes I sit there and it's like a a 2x2 whiteboard conversation. Like, here's a big, huge gap, everyone. And still there's just a kind of a reluctance to acknowledge that gap. It's just, it's kind of hilarious to me.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And I think it goes to kind of what I was saying before, where I think the reason is because people like solving problems that they're comfortable with, right? So like you said, right, people, everybody's implementing CRMs. That's not even a question. Of course, you're going to use an external CRM that's not included in your PMS, right? Or even if you're going to use one that is included in your PMS, you're going to do heavy market research to decide which is the best CRM for you and your teams to use. If you're going to pick what does your tech stack look like, the first thing that you're going to look at is your CRM. But that's because, in my opinion, it's because the decision makers there, right, are former property managers, they're former leasing agents. Right. That's what they know best, and that's where people go where they're comfortable. Whereas if you take a company who's or an executive vice president of the company who is a former maintenance technician, I can promise you they're not looking at CRM is probably not going to be their first technology that they look into. Right. I think it's naturally people going where they're comfortable with. And I also think it goes to people really understanding the problem. Like what we said before, I think people don't realize when they see an occupancy problem, they look at leasing, AKA CRM, as the solution. Whereas they don't look at, they see that as a problem versus really saying, well, is maintenance my problem here? And again, more often than not all the time, but more often than not, it's a bigger problem on maintenance than it is on anything else. So that's, I think, but I agree with you. I think looking at UpTech, looking at all these shows, maintenance, in terms of the solutions that are on the market are few and far between, especially as it relates to operations technology.
Mm-hmm. I find it interesting when you take a look at why people leave. And this is, I think I was just looking at like my fourth study of this year, like the fourth version of why people leave and why people choose. And why people leave, I saw this great one that came out. Who had it? It's part of the list, and it was like why people choose and why people what or operators think people leave for, and then the actual reason why people leave. And when you look at it up and down, top to bottom, this goes to your comment on what they're comfortable with. The reasons why operators think they leave are largely external, like they left because of family reasons, they left because of whatever. It's not things that I control, what they think people leave. And then why people leave is all things that are totally within your control. Like they left because we don't have a pool. They left because we don't have whatever. They left because it's all these things that just blaming versus being accountable for, oh no, they're actually telling us 1, 2, 3. Like I find it funny when I last one looked at, it was like of the top 4, 2 were maintenance related. It was like condition of the site, condition of the unit, and maintenance. So it's like, okay, well, you're looking actually like 50% of the top 4 reasons are maintenance related, and we're still, looking to go get a poo tester, right, and bring that online to make sure that the pets are happy. Like I just find like this is a part that it's a bit of my frustration right now is that, I'm trying to be careful that I'm not in my own echo chamber, but like the answer feels exceptionally obvious from independent sources.
Yeah, again, to your point, I mean, it's the famous saying is, the maintenance is the number one amenity, right? Meaning, all the operators today are going around, renovating their pools, renovating their clubhouses, their gyms, their fitness centers, and everything in between, and trying to figure out how do we compete, right? How do we offer a Class A experience? I think the fundamentals first make sure that you're offering the best possible maintenance experience. No one cares if you have a really nice fitness center if their AC isn't working in their apartment. They just simply don't care. And quite frankly, it also sends the wrong message to the residents that you actually care more about your brand, so to speak, than you care about the residents themselves. And you actually see a lot of negative reviews on properties where it's saying, oh, they spend all the money renovating their fitness center, but they can't spend the money to fix my AC. Right. So, I think that's like what you said, I think what residents care about most. And it's, I dare somebody to convince me otherwise. I don't think it's possible. There's not a single amenity in the world that a resident could possibly care more about than maintenance itself.
Well, it's the only amenity that every resident, 100% of your residents will eventually touch.
Well, 100%. Exactly.
Right. I mean, not everyone uses the gym.
Yeah. But even that, the lack of a gym is not negative. The lack of maintenance is negative. Where
100%. That's well put.
Right. I mean, the lack of an amenity is a positive thing. Whereas, right, if you have an amenity that a gym that's positive, you have a pool that's positive. If you have maintenance, that's not positive. That's the standard, right?
Right.
It's only the lack thereof that where it starts. Yeah.
It creates a gap. So when you're taking a look at the market, how do you find the ones who, in the context of hell yes, like, you guys, you do your scans, you do your marketing, you do your positioning, you bring everything in, you bring customers in the funnel, and you begin to understand who's likely to buy and who's not likely to buy.
Yeah.
How do you begin to filter for that and look for that? How do you find that hell yes buyer?
Yeah, excellent question. I'll be honest with you, and this may come across the wrong way and sound cocky, but the hell yes buyers have been coming to us.
Well, that's inbound. That's successful inbound and marketing,
That's
right?
it's yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. Our strategy here is, and who are we targeting? How are we targeting? We're not targeting. We're looking to build a good partnership, and we said we're going to build an incredible product. We're going to offer the best possible customer experience, customer service to our clients. We have internally, we have a protocol. It's called the AOP, the AppWork Obsession Plan. Every single person, down to the groundskeepers and maintenance technicians that are using our product, have to be absolutely obsessed with us. And we believe if we can go in those two areas, product and client success, and do that really well, success will follow. And we've seen that time and time again. So most of our growth, and we've had insane growth, unheard of in the industry, over the last 2 years. And it's all just been a lot of word of mouth, a lot of people introducing us from one person to the next person. Even our marketing has been, clients going on podcasts and we happen to come up in conversation. And that has happened countless times. We've had, even recently, like most operators, most prop tech companies, they're reaching out to some of their top clients and saying, hey, let's partner up, let's do a press release together, let's maybe we could do let's hire we're going to hire a PR firm, and if you guys can help give a quote for the PR firm, right? That's something that a lot of prop tech companies do to help increase their brand. I'll be honest with you, we have an NMHC top 50 operator that reached out to us recently saying, hey, we've engaged our PR firm, we'd like to do a write-up about how we're using AppWork to improve our operations. Can you give a quote? Can you so
Wow.
For us, everything has been totally inverse.
Awesome.
And we're thankfully today in a position where the hell yes clients are coming to us.
Yeah.
And I think it's all due to the incredible people that we have on our team, the support we're able to offer our clients, and the incredible product that our team has been able to build and continues to build.
Well, you guys done a great work of actually creating that flywheel, right? I mean, that's evidence of product market fit with respect to the problem that you're solving, because you've got inbound coming in, expressing their needs and their desires. They've already filtered you against all their different options. They've already decided their current options suck. They've already decided that, they've gone to market, they've looked at it, they've heard from other people, they've gotten conviction around the problem. And so they're in a hell yes position, because they're like, when can I start? And then let me know what the price is.
Right. Yeah. A lot of what we get is just warm inbound. So we'll have a client that is really happy with us, and they'll send an email and say, hey, Sean, I want you to meet so-and-so. I filled them in on AppWork, and they're excited to learn more. And that's it. I mean,
Amazing.
That's half the problem.
Well, then you're not in a competitive situation. You're not having, you're not having to deal with, you're helping out. Like, it's actually, it's such a better place to be from a hell yes perspective, because you find yourself on the same side of the table as the customer. Yeah. And you're seeking to partner. I love that language with them and understand what the goals they're trying to achieve. And then how can we achieve those goals together?
Exactly. Spot on.
So you talked about the techs. Let's talk about the techs a bit. We've done a bunch of campaigns around burnout and so on and so forth, and they've been lukewarm with respect to returns. But I'm so passionate about the problem, I can't stop talking about it, because I've seen these people, I've seen the work they do, and I'm just so I don't know, I'm compelled. It's work that I couldn't do, and I see the garbage and the mess and the just grossness that they've got to deal with on a semi-regular basis, and I feel like this is a tough job. So when you talk about the techs, how do you guys architect a better tech experience, better tech employment experience?
Yeah, excellent question. And I think some of our greatest features, or one of our amazing features, again, came as a operator ourselves. I remember it was during COVID, and at that rate, what they called the Great Resignation, and we, as with most property management companies, were having a very, very hard time, even harder than usual time, retaining our maintenance talent. And we had a meeting internally, and as we did as operators, whenever we had a problem, there was, we had the various different internal departments. So for example, in this case, we had HR, marketing, and then we had our technology team in the room together. And from the HR perspective, we came up with a game plan, how we're going to, differently, how we're going to operate differently to help retain our technicians. From a marketing perspective, how can we better market both internally and externally our brand, our employer brand, to try to get people to make it easier to recruit, but also get our internal people to stay longer. And then from a technology perspective, how can we solve this with technology? And we've come up with some incredible tools that's been instrumental for us as operators, and has now been instrumental for our clients to help them keep their teams engaged, and increase the employer, the relationship there. I think a big thing that we looked at here when we found that within the company culture, as a property management company, it was very easy. Most of the leasing teams and the office teams were fully engaged within the culture. Whereas maintenance teams, being that they're not in front of a computer, they don't have access to technology. They're not. It's some of them. A lot of them don't have email addresses, as an example, right? So even if they do have, they're not checking their emails. They're not looking at their emails. They're not on their phone all day. So how do we get them more engaged within the general company culture? That we've come up with a few of them. I think one of the biggest and most exciting things that we've done is this gamification program, where essentially property management companies can now are able to create different performance milestones, badges, essentially, and it can even be, they're fully customized so much that the client can create their own badge based on their own company lingo, their own company. They can upload their company brand, so to speak, to that badge, and create that as a performance metric. And what it really does is it gets their maintenance teams that much more engaged, because then not only now the maintenance teams is working towards something, and again more on involved in the company and the culture and the goals of the company. But again, obviously, then when they hit that, right, when they reach that goal, there's now, again, they get a shout out company wide. They feel good about themselves, right? There's a lot of internal communication. The property manager comes, the regional, hey, great job, right? We have clients that told us that they converted these little digital badges into physical trophies that they give out. I mean, there's all these different things that our clients are doing, essentially, but leveraging or building on top of the core technology that we built at the end of the day to get their teams more engaged. Again, that the badge program is just one of many, essentially.
I think that like the badge program, and we did something somewhat similar. I mean, I would say, like, we recognize it in this job where it's a nonstop pipeline of complaints. We needed it, and this came from talking to them, right? We need to create a reason to celebrate. Like, how can I manufacture an event based on really something that is, a series of accomplishments, but it's relatively, I don't say inconsequential. It's more important that the event is a function of the work being delivered, and that it has been recognized, and it's recognized always and consistently, so that we can actually create a reward system around that and recognition system around that, because otherwise there's no rewards and there's no recognitions. It's just a constant grind of negativity. And we looked at the human psychology of it all, and you grind yourself down, and if you never pop up, you just keep grinding down.
Yeah, it's burnout.
And that grind down is depressing.
Yeah. It is, and again, it leads to burnout. It leads to turnover. People end up, saying, "Hey, I just need to change the scenery." And it's, I think you hit it spot on. And by the way, again, another thing that we have to realize is, and to me, it's so obvious, and I take it for granted, but so to speak, before we had AppWork as operators, and what our clients tell us every day is one of the things that they struggle with, which so detrimental to the morale and the culture, is without a platform like AppWork, you're constantly rewarding and recognizing the wrong people. Right? Especially with maintenance. It's so, how do you gauge if a maintenance person is doing a good job or not? Because they're hanging around the office and constantly telling you things, or because, I think the best performing maintenance technicians that we see are the ones that are never in the office. They're running around, they're turning units or doing work orders all day. Right. But very often it's those that are the more polished speaking people that, that they but they end up hanging around the office, and they have good relationships with the residents because they're constantly talking to the residents, and, the residents, like them because they can play therapist, right? Which is great. It's an important role to have. Don't get me wrong. But recognizing those people as your top performers when I have somebody there that's working their butt off in a unit for 8 hours straight, knocking out dozens of work orders in a day, and he gets zero recognition at all. There's nothing more that hurts the morale of the individual person and the overall property when that person who's not pulling their weight is the one getting recognized.
And it's funny, like when you think of like the human condition and the wiring of why we do things and motivation, right? Like when you don't get that recognition and you're on that grind, you begin to feel helpless about the work that you're doing. And then consequently you get disengaged. You start just doing the work you're supposed to do versus kind of going over and above, or you start getting a little bit sloppy on quality. And the maintenance side of things, like if you start getting sloppy on quality, things start breaking, it starts compounding. And so whatever we can do, I mean, this is to everybody that's listening. I mean, even if you don't have one of our softwares, like you got to start creating moments to celebrate that are linked to a behavior. If we start creating moments to celebrate that are just kind of random, people think like the pizzas and beers or whatever, people don't really find connection to that. But that moment of giving them recognition for the work that they delivered, especially to your point, I hadn't really heard that before, but I totally get it. Those that are kind of like in the field that are not kind of doing the pull, they don't have, maybe they don't attract the politics that others might.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that are actually moving the needle on the work orders being closed. They're the ones that are, have the diligence for the preventative maintenance inspections. They're the ones that might have the legacy knowledge about that boiler unit that we should have, PM'd a couple of years back. Like they know all those things, and it's because of their diligence. And so recognizing them for their work is something that is, I mean, if you don't do it, they're going to bail. They're going to drop the keys.
It's not that they're going to, they are. We're seeing that, right? I mean, that's
They're
what's
seeing
happening.
it, right?
That's why your turnover is exceptionally high. There was a stat, I think a couple of years ago, the NEA published a data point. Don't quote me on this exactly. It was, I think the industry average turnover on maintenance was like 38%.
Yeah.
I have to check the number again, around something like that.
I saw the same number, 38.4 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. We just looked, quickly at the data in our platform. We're seeing a 12% difference there, a massive decrease. So we're seeing a 26% turnover rate for clients that are using our platform, which is big. And again, we're just getting started. So the data that we have is.
Well, I think it's also really interesting about that, like the kind of the survivorship of that data, is if you're committing to a maintenance software, you're committing. You've elevated that maintenance as a priority. Like if you're going to let people run around with paper and pens, then you're just sloughing it off as a secondary citizen versus kind of like what you're trying to achieve as a core business. So we're finding as well, those that have invested in maintenance software are invested in maintenance.
Yeah. And by the way, it's so much so that it's actually funny because one of the biggest concerns that people bring to us, and they're like, hey, we're not sure if we should move forward. We're not sure, what's the concern? They say, well, we're worried about our technicians pushing back, not wanting change, being scared of change. And, we don't want to ruffle the feathers. Our teams are happy. We don't want them to leave. And in reality, it's those that are using technology like ours or ours specifically are actually the ones that are having much less technicians leave. So it's like the reason why they're scared is the reason why they don't realize, but they actually have more technicians leaving because they're not implementing the technology versus when they do.
And so a parallel objection that we get is that our techs aren't they're not very technically savvy.
Yeah.
Right. And I just like that. Now we're just making up excuses today.
Yeah, for sure.
Because like they are technically savvy. They work with their hands and their eyes more than you might, or I might. And so they actually are more intuitively inclined to these sort of things than actually we are as office folks. And so I find that was another frustrating objection that we get. And I just like, well, let's just get them to try it. Let's get them to use it.
I'll tell you so much so, though, to your point, though, even those that are worried about, my technicians are not tech savvy. I mean, think about, though, because they're comparing, technology like ours, what you and I have, to essentially to Yardi's back-end accounting function, which is designed to be used by CPAs
Yeah.
is very different. Think about the technology that we're putting in front of it's number one, like you said, they're not as technological illiterate as you think they are. That's number one. But number two is you're not putting accounting technology in their hands. You're putting
Mhm.
maintenance technology in their hand, which is something that they understand, that they resonate with, that they enjoy, and they're excited for generally. Something that they appreciate. It's not something that you're not there to make their job more difficult. And I think people overestimate that.
um, well, that was the next question is around the objections you typically get. Because like I hear those same things, and it's either the case of like, well, we're really busy, we're really our techs aren't gonna buy in, or or our techs aren't very good at technology. Those are the three things that we hear. Is anything different from you guys?
Yeah, I think for us, like you said, I think timing is a very big thing,
Yeah,
which is both sometimes is the easiest excuse to fall back on somebody
yeah,
when you're not interested in something or just don't want to give it the time of day. You just now is not the right time.
yeah.
Timing is something that we hear. Um, the other thing that we hear, um, hmm, I'd say timing. Like we said before. I guess people being scared of change is a
Yeah.
big one. I don't know. I think those are like a major objections that we're getting.
When people are like, do you find that people? I mean, you mentioned this earlier. Like people are finding you through recommendations and referrals. How can you tell, like, when they come in and they're talking about things like some even referrals, some move faster than others. How can
Yeah,
you tell that you've got a deal that's going to go fast?
I have no idea. I'll be
Oh,
honest.
yeah.
There are deals that I'll get off a demo. Sometimes it's the first demo with them. Sometimes the second demo with them. I'm like, all right, we're going to close this one next week, and then it takes us a year
Mhm,
and a half to close them. Sometimes it's a
mhm.
company that we're working with, and we're like, all right, it's going to take us a year to close them, and they close 3 weeks later. So I'll be honest. Maybe I have terrible instincts. It could be, but I'm so
I'm trying
bad.
to figure it out.
Even internally, like it's not just me. I think it's sometimes within the team. Like sometimes, yes, obviously we'll have a good engaging demo. We'll have an indication this deal is going to move faster than a typical deal,
Mhm.
or the opposite. This deal will move slower than a typical deal. But we've also been wrong so many times.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like folks don't necessarily reveal their priority stack on their to-do list, and then I often find that like things can bump the priority list in terms of like when they're about to go do something, and that's out of my control, out of our control,
Yeah,
out of your control. You hear laws change, and all of a sudden they've got to mobilize on something to make things more compliant. They want to cover up that gap. Especially I find like in the third party space, like there's really a motion to uh, you know remain compliant first because they don't want to risk being off compliance, and then that'll prioritize maybe optimizing. And I get that given the business relationship with the client, their clients. It's just that sometimes that compromises because you only have so many resources, right, and time, and so you end up compromising maybe an optimization opportunity for a compliance opportunity, and sometimes that's something you didn't see coming.
yeah, and I guess to your point, and kind of another example of that, I also think that the industry can probably do better when it comes to planning. There's a lot that we as operators, and I put myself in that, we'll say timing's not right, and the time that you're right, timing's not right because we're onboarding now 5 new properties, 5 new assets, and now we have to figure.
Mhm.
But if we were properly planned, that shouldn't stop our organization and stop cold. Like, all right, we can't do anything now because we're onboarding 5 new properties. But I'll tell you, I've been on that side very often. That does happen. Is we have to stop what we're doing, reshift all of our resources internally, and how do we make sure that this acquisition goes through successfully? We onboard the
Mhm.
property smoothly, or that's just one scenario. You could have another, so to speak, something that throws a wrench in things where I don't know, I have a property and things were going well. All of a sudden, I don't know, something happened internally on the site, and 2 of my staff members left, and now there's a fire that we have to put out. Then you have to now focus on that. Or
Mhm.
there's so many moving parts in the property management industry where things could just pop up out of nowhere. And then,
Oh yeah.
that could delay things by a week. It could delay things by a month. It could delay things by 6 months. Right. Like you said, and one of those things that could pop up is all of a sudden there's new legislation that came out. And okay, well, sorry, everybody that we're talking to about that. We now have to focus on that. Right. There's so many moving parts, so many examples we can think of where that can come up. So we understand that.
Well, and it is interesting. Like when you take a look at, like, let's say an example, you're running like 7,500 units, and then all of a sudden BD wins 2,500 units, right? Like you've just get grown by a third, right? And you theoretically need to bring on, let's call it 200 maintenance techs to support those units.
Yeah.
200, did my math right? 20,000, 110, 2000, 20, sorry, 20, 25 techs, 25 techs. You're running 25 techs. And you're going to commit time to hiring, vetting, bringing all those 25 techs, and then put them into a system that is called lumpy. And then ultimately they're having a bad tech onboarding experience because it's all rushed and it's the old way of doing things. And then this is, that's success, because that means you actually won those units. Right. And so, like in that situation, you're bringing on, 25 people into a system that is rocky to start with, and then you've got to be successful because you brought on, your company's grown by a third in one full transaction, and that's got to work out for that client as well. And it's just kind of like, those are like, again, those are wins. Like that's a winning situation that you need to accommodate, that changes all the planning. And so those are just kind of like, and so the fallback state, to your point earlier, or how we started the show, is that people are used to solving problems, whether used to solving the problems. And I find it interesting when we look at, for Hell Yes buyers, we're looking for people that have a lot of jobs open, right? Because like that's how they are used to solving their problems. And if someone's got a ton of maintenance coordinators and maintenance techs out on Indeed, well, they for sure are either just sold something or about to sell something, or they've got a massive turnover problem, or they just like, they're constantly trying to pull that through because that's how they're used to solving that problem. I thought of some people that have like job openings for like 7 or 8 months.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as operators, what we actually had is in the markets that we were very heavily concentrated in, we just keep the job openings open forever because we always had job opens. Right. So we had, at Charlotte, North Carolina, we had a high concentration of properties. We always just had a bunch of standing
jobs just always open.
Yeah.
So when you look back, kind of winding things down here, when you look back on your career and your kind of progression through all these things, or maybe giving advice to reform yourself, what's a bit of advice you'd give out to those people trying to find that Hell Yes buyer?
I think people have to be more focused on on the problem and the solution versus trying to sell your product or sell your solution. Meaning focus on making sure that you have, I mean, again, I'm a product person naturally. I'd say, again, I think it was a gamble that we took at the time, and I think it's a gamble that proved successful, is focus on building the best value for your client. Don't focus on selling the product. The sale will come naturally. Right, with the right product, people are going to want it. People, the industry is thirsty for technology. They're thirsty for innovation. They're thirsty for efficiency. They're thirsty for value. And if you can provide value, your Hell Yes buyers are going to come. So focus on figuring out how to provide the most value. That's what.
And you're feeling that today with the inbound motion that's coming in, right?
We're doing it with everything that we do. Even the outbound motions that we are doing, right? All the conversations, not about, we're not going to call it a salesy company. We're just trying to, hey, here's the value that we bring. Here's how we built our company. Here's the solution to the problem. And it's something that, again, it makes the sales process a lot easier for us. It really does.
Yeah. Who should we talk to next? Who should we have on the show next? So it's a step for everybody.
Yeah, so many. I can think of so many people. I don't know. I love Jindu's an inspiration of mine. I'd love for you to get him on, talk to him about this.
Frida?
Jindu.
Oh, Jindu. Yeah, I actually mean to get Jindu on. Had been on last Christmas, so it's probably about time to have Jindu on and chat with him. He's awesome. I do appreciate everything that he brings to the conversation, especially with respect to his kind of perspective on UI and how that can change the whole experience. He's great. I'll ping him. We're long overdue for a conversation, so may as well do it in front of 150 people. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Sean. Appreciate you coming today and having a chat. So I think the things that I've learned today in terms of the conversation is that when you're in a successful position of helping people achieve their goals, that creates an internal engine of inbound leads. They're referring to you, to your company. They're coming in warm, and it's a conversation of maybe can we figure out the fit and the timing and all those sort of things. Your choice to focus on the problem and product to help drive that is helping create, ease of use problems in a job that really has a lot of hard to use. I said to somebody else, the maintenance job is being played on hard mode. It's not being played in easy mode, and it could be played on easy mode. And because it's being played on hard mode, it's really difficult for these people, these techs, to do their job. They're unrecognized. They're often, they're under tooled to be able to do the things that they need to do, and consequently, they end up turning out and leaving the business and going somewhere else, and taking all of that departmental knowledge with them. And all those things all added together by focusing on the tech and the person who's actually using the software versus the people that maybe are in the CPAs and the CPA type software. It creates a differentiation for you guys because it's tech led, it's product led, it's usage led, and that's going to drive that sales engine that you guys are experiencing today. That's why you're feeling hell yes.
Yeah.
Right on. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing everything today. Everyone, thanks for listening today. If you're on the live, as said earlier, if you're catching this outside of live, just add comments. We'll both get pinged there. And then if you're catching the podcast, like, follow, favorite, subscribe, however it is, click the download button. That's helps people find a whole lot easier. Sean, thank you for your time today. It was awesome. And everyone else, have a great, wonderful day. Hope this is valuable. Take care.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome.